what it did in Ireland, is even when I lived there, was it 5 odd years ago, the idea of actually a referendum on repeal the 8th was, a lot of people talked about, was still like way in the future. But the discussion that arose from the Citizens' Assembly, it kind of helped some of the politicians that were sitting on the fence actually push for it, because they could see that, oh no, like, you know, this random selection of people, a lot of them are actually in favour of this, and so that helped push things forward, I think.
Yeah, another example close at home might be something like the named person scheme. I think if that had gone through that idea, going through the sort of Citizens' Assembly idea, I think a lot of the problems with it, I think, would have been ironed out. Because the thing is, they were going to just dump that on the parents out of nowhere. And I think I remember distinctly the question time where it was Hamza Youssef that was on it, and he was like a deer in the headlights trying to defend this thing. So I don't think he actually anticipated how much of a negative reaction the general public would give it.
I mean, the thing is, it's actually a really, really good idea, but because there's so many of these, you know, horrendous cases where some child has been dreadfully abused, and it turns out disparate people had bits of information but didn't act or didn't put it together with something else. So it's not in principle a bad idea, but there need to be such safeguards on it.
I think what the sort of from a simple human psychology level they didn't anticipate was that if you just hit the population with this out of nowhere, which was their plan, they were just going to drop this, I think, in August 2015 or somewhere around that bit, with no real heads up, or not even a leaflet through your door to explain what this was.
Yeah.
And I think that the question time was the first time that David Dimbleby just read out what this was, and everyone was like, what? There's going to be like this named government representative for my child? What is this? It's going to be compulsory and I can't get out of it, and all this other stuff that came from it. And I think it wasn't quite as bad as maybe it was made out on that show. But nonetheless, the fact that the government did not think, maybe if we roll this out with no heads up or proper information to the parents, they might react negatively if they get some sound bites on this.
The thing is, I don't think that there was. I mean, I was fully aware of what it was, and I was quite supportive of it, because it wasn't just for child abuse and things like that. It was actually also for kids with, maybe learning needs or things like that. The idea was just that every child has a person who's the person that information funnels through. So if you've got something to report, you report it through that person, and it means that there won't be disparate pots of information about. And generally speaking, that was going to be like a health visitor up until they go to school, and then it would probably be a school teacher once they were at school. And that in and of itself would have meant that you just wouldn't be able to say, well, social services didn't know that they'd been picked up by the police, and the police didn't know that social services knew this, because it would all get reported to the teacher. So if a kid got picked up by the police, it'd get reported to the teacher. If they attend a hospital, it would get reported to the teacher.
I think my take on it would just be, I think that's too much for a teacher. My compromise on it would probably have been that you had a lot more social worker presence within schools. I think the teachers are under enough shit, or as it stands, to then expect them to do that.
The thing to bear in mind is that the cases, that the number of children where this would be happening would probably only be the children who would already be under social worker control. So I mean,
the problem is that you can already share that information if someone's already in a situation where they're in any kind of danger or risk.
Yeah, but
they were changing the criteria from being in a situation of risk to just you have some sort of concern, and then you're allowed to share any kind of information. And that's the kind of thing that probably if it had gone through another system, they probably would have been able to pick up on that and say, well, actually, you need to be very much more specific about when you're allowed to share that information.
We're not actually in any disagreement. I think that what I was saying there was that having the Citizens' Assembly idea, why it'd be positive, was all the stuff, the conversation we're having now is clearly what the SNP didn't do. Whereas in the Citizens' Assembly scenario, all this would have got brought up. It would all have been discussed. You'd had teachers there, social workers there, representatives of the public, parents, everybody. All this stuff would then got bundled into a document that Sturgeon could have read.
All of that out. They could have hammered all of that and say, right, so parents are concerned about X, Y, Z, so we need to make sure that actually the information that will be, the only information that can be passed is this, and only in these sorts of circumstances, but when it does happen, that it all goes through this central person. And the idea of it all going through that central person, that was what the named person was. That is actually a stroke of genius idea, but the representation of it was bad.
Because I think Hamza, not to criticise him, but I mean, he didn't do a very good job that night in question time. I think he just kind of went to bits. I think he was so taken off guard at the universally negative reaction, which I kind of saw coming. I thought the minute you pitch this unless you really sell it, they're going to shit all over it, because immediately you're going to go, it's 1984, oh my god, because it reads like that at a glance unless you get down into the nitty gritty detail of it. And he wasn't really, I think, armed with the correct information or sentence or just pizzazz to get it over with the audience, because they just were having none of it.
At the moment they've got the committee system, so they do invite people in to say their piece in front of like a group of politicians, but it seems like it's kind of paying lip service to it, really. I watch some of them sometimes. You can get them online and watch them. But it's kind of like, well, thanks very much for your opinions. Bye.
We're still doing what you want to do.
Yeah.